So I just watched through the Pixar series Win or Lose, created by Carrie Hobson and Michael Yates. Now, if you've heard of this show, you probably know that it has had a very rough production history. And I was interested when this was first announced because I thought that it was interesting that Pixar was actually making a show. And I thought, well, I mean, the premise itself doesn't sound like anything that amazing, but I'm interested enough in a Pixar series that I'll check it out. And I believe that was back in 2021 that the series was first announced, and then the release date got pushed back like 3 or 4 times. It was delayed quite a few times, and we didn't get it until this year. And like my excitement for it has gone down a bit, particularly because we have now gotten an actual Pixar series, Dream Productions, which yes was very good, but the novelty of Win or Lose being Pixar's first TV show is kind of gone now. But still, I told myself I would watch it, so I went ahead and watched it, and I'm so glad I did because I actually had a really good time with this. I thought it was kind of great if I'm being honest. Yes, like first of all, this if you don't know, this is like an anthology series that focuses on the same period of time, like a period from a softball game to 1 week later at the championship game, told from 8 different individuals' perspectives who are all somewhat connected. And I thought they did a good job at making every character in this series likable. All of the performances were good, and like even like there were some characters who I initially didn't like, most notable example of that being Vanessa, and they actually took these characters and made them likable to where I was pretty much rooting for everybody by the end of the show. One exception to that I will say is Kai's dad. Like he was way too mean throughout the show, and I don't think he suffered enough consequences for that. Like I don't know, I don't think he learned his lesson enough for it to counteract how much of a jerk he was throughout the show. The show itself was well written. Like I think it tackled each character's problems very well, and it was also funny. There were a few jokes here and there that didn't really work. They felt a little, for lack of a better word, they felt a little cringe, but for the most part, I was laughing pretty consistently, and it even got me laughing pretty hard at some points. The way the show was formatted, like I said, sort of all these different characters and their point of view throughout this week and the things they go through, it actually does a good job at encouraging binge watching because throughout each episode, there are little teases about what other characters are up to during this week, and you're kind of like, you have to keep watching because you want to know what is going to happen with that character. And it did a good job encouraging me to watch through pretty much the whole show in one sitting. And I thought it was cool that there were certain details that were sprinkled in each episode that they kind of revisit later, and it makes sense. I thought that it's kind of satisfying to see that. And it was cool how there will be some details that are a bit different from episode to episode. Like in one episode, a character's reaction to something can be different than it is in another episode, and there can be some meaning to that because like the whole point of the show is that it's all about perspective. Like the way one person views something can be different from how another person views something, or how another person views the way a person reacts to something can be different. Like I think it does a good job showing that. And again, it's very well spelled out for kids, but at the same time adults will still enjoy it. And it was a little funny how the show can actually get a bit risque at times, at least for Pixar. Like there are actually a couple of sexual innuendos here and there. There's a couple of times where they tease a curse word that a character is about to say, and there are quite a few teenagers throughout the show, and they almost always look like they're animated as if they were high. I don't know if that was intentional, particularly one scene in Vanessa's episode where she's talking to these 2 teenagers at a party. Like they both looked high the entire scene, and I was like, is this intentional or is this just like an accident? I'm not 100% sure, but it was funny either way. The animation was great. It was very cartoony and over the top, as well as the character designs being more cartoony than Pixar usually does. Like this animation is closer to what you would see in something like Luca or Turning Red. And it was done well. It fits well with the overall tone of the show. And each episode has a different visual style to show what that character is going through. And I thought they were all done well. There are some episodes where it's a bit understated, like it's not always as in your face as other characters' visual styles are, but either way, they were done well. And by the end of it, it felt like there was a purpose to it. So even if it was understated, I thought it was done well. Um, if I had if I had to give any criticisms of the show, like I said, not every joke lands. There are some questions that by the end of the show aren't really answered, or some details that characters that like characters should have noticed that aren't really addressed without going into spoilers. And it like there are some scenes that are missing in certain characters' episodes. Like for example, in episode 3, there's a scene where Rochelle is talking to her mother and they both kind of blow up at each other, but that scene is but when Rochelle's mother Vanessa has an episode, they don't show that scene at all. And I'm like, it would have been interesting to see that scene from Vanessa's perspective, but they didn't. I don't know. I guess Vanessa's episode was already kind of packed full of stuff, so I guess it was probably for time, but either way it would have been nice for them to show that. And yeah, I can't really talk about this show without addressing the censorship that Disney did of this show. So, if you have not been following animation news, the character Kai was originally supposed to have a storyline where she was revealed to be trans, and this storyline was completely cut out by Disney in last December, I believe it was officially confirmed. And yes, it's very sad to see this go. It's very sad to see that Disney still isn't willing to tell these stories. I especially feel bad for Kai's voice actress, Chanel Stewart, because apparently she was actually sold on voicing this character because of this storyline in particular. So for them to cut it out and still have her in the show just feels a bit like a slap in the face, if I'm being honest. It's very unfair. Like the story, her episode story still technically functions without the trans element, but at the same time, there's just some details that don't add up. Like they kind of replace her being trans with something else without going into spoilers, and it's just not as significant as a result. It just like it could have been so much more if they had left the trans storyline in instead of just being a storyline that technically works and functions. Not functions well, but it does function. So that is very sad to just see that they would cut that out. And before I wrap up, I do want to show, because I do still like this show. I do still think it's a good show. So I'm going to go ahead and rank each episode really quick before I give my final thoughts, just to sort of. And I will go into a bit more detail of each episode, but I will not go into spoilers. I will still keep these thoughts spoiler free. So now each episode of this show ranked best to worst really quick. Best episode is Yuin's episode. He was my favorite character in the show, without a doubt. Like just the way he like first of all, I thought he was funny before his episode, but then when he actually got his own episode, not only was he funny and the kind of over the top ways he tried to impress Taylor were funny, but then they actually showed him and Taylor's romance, and it was like really adorable. Like the whole montage they have together, the scenes of Yuen trying to help Taylor become the catcher, and the scene. Like there is one scene that I probably shouldn't discuss for spoilers, but there is a scene. Like the visual style of Yuen's episode is that there's a little Yuen living inside of him that's supposed to be the real him, and there's a scene involving that is just so adorable. It's my favorite scene in the show, and he is my favorite character. And that just makes the end of the episode, again, without getting into spoilers, so sad. Like, you understand you understand the perspectives of each character in that moment, but still, it's a really sad ending. And that was just a great episode. Is my favorite. Second favorite is Coach Dan's episode, which is also the finale. Like I also really liked Coach Dan. I love Will Forte. I think he's an underrated actor, and I was very happy to see him in this. I was happy to see his character get his own episode. He was very likable and funny as well, and like you also felt sorry for him because of the situation he was going through, and also just the fact that the finale did such a good job like bringing every character that we've seen so far's stories together. Like yeah, like I said, there are a few details that are kind of unaddressed and a few questions unanswered, but still this was still for the most part a good finale wrapping everything up. And I did like Coach Dan, so that was a very good episode as well. Those episodes are both like 9 out of 10 for me. They were like up there with the best parts of Dream Productions for me, which is a show that I really liked. Next up is Ira. Like his is mostly because of the visual style, like the way it kind of goes 2D, like a children's illustration look. I really liked that style. I thought it looked really good. And I just liked his character as well. He was funny and I liked the complicated relationship he had with the friends he makes at the ballpark. Again, without getting into spoilers, I thought that was handled very well. And the fact that he was so young, it does help with the way they portray him as a bit naive. So that one worked really well, and I liked that episode for that and the style. Next is Rochelle's episode. I liked Rochelle. I felt bad for her because of the situation she was going through, both with her mom and just with the team. I was rooting for her, and I was hoping that her going down this certain road without getting into spoilers. I was rooting for her to not go too far down it, and it was very much investing to see if she would or not. Her character is not like particularly interesting in and of itself. It's more just the things she's going through and the way she feels she has to be the boss, or she has to be the leader or else of all these different things in order to properly do the things she wants to do. But just her character being a bit uninteresting in and of itself is kind of why her episode is like closer to the middle for me. Next is Frank's episode. Like I liked Frank. He had some of the cringe humor because some of the humor with him is kind of like, "Ooh, look how embarrassing it is." Laugh at how cringy it is, and I laughed sometimes at that, but other times it was just cringy, and I wasn't laughing. I liked the video game aspect that they had with him on the dating app. I thought that was done really well, and it was a very creative way of showing that. And yeah, I can't talk about his episode without talking about my favorite side character in the whole show. Like my favorite character who doesn't get their own episode, the janitor, played by Flula Borg. He was so funny. Like this character could have easily been annoying, but he was just so funny. Not only because of just how mostly just because of how over the top he was. Like they didn't just stop at making him flamboyant. He was like straight up teleporting. Like he was like on Frank's sort of talking over Frank's shoulder at one point, and then just like walked away, and then was just it popped out of a kid's locker to take his phone and look at the dating app. Like it was just that was a very funny character. I kind of wish he got his own episode, if I'm being honest. But yeah, he is definitely carrying this episode. It's kind of a bit lower because like Frank's character it's itself is not very interesting, and like I said, some of the humor can be a bit cringe inducing. Next is Kai's episode. Like this is mostly because of them cutting the trans storyline, and as a result, there's just the story doesn't make it functions, but also just some details are kind of weird. Like it feels a bit melodramatic at points because of the details they like changed, and it just kind of like, well, I get why you would react this way if it were because of the original storyline, but because of what it is now, it's like, okay, it's not that big of a deal. Calm down. And this is also the episode where we have to deal with Kai's dad, who, like I said, is just huge jerk. Couldn't stand him. Kai herself was very likable. I did like her when she was in the other episodes, and she was likable here. So that is elevating the episode to where it is still a good episode. It's just lower because of the things that are kind of taking away from it. Next up is Vanessa. Like I said, this is a character I initially hated because she was annoying, and I thought she was very irresponsible before her episode. And her episode did a good job of showing things from her perspective. Again, not only does it show how her life is actually tougher than she made it seem before, but also it shows that kind of like the biggest problem with her is less that she's irresponsible, more just she doesn't communicate some things with her daughter for reasons that she kind of I can understand why she would have these reasons, but at the same time there are some points where I look back at Rochelle's episode and I'm like, okay, this would have been fixed. This problem could have been fixed if you had just communicated with her and not like. And there are some things where I'm like, I don't even understand why she's hiding some of the things she hides, or she just phrases things so poorly. I'm like, but why would you do? Why would you could have communicated better and these problems would have been solved? And she was also had a bit of the cringe humor in there. I would say a bit more than Frank's episode, honestly, since she's an influencer, so she has more of the cringe humor than any of the other characters. So even if I liked her, she still did drag that episode down a bit. So it's at the second bottom. And at the bottom is Lori's episode, which I like. I like Lori. I liked her character. I liked the situation. I liked the problem she had. I was rooting for her. But the problem with this is that the situation she's facing and the visual style that conveys this is just so similar to Anxiety from Inside Out 2 that I was kind of pulled out of the episode a bit because of that. And I was kind of like, well, this is just like Anxiety from Inside Out 2, but just not done as well. And like, I get this was technically being made before Inside Out 2 came out. So, like, but at the same time, it's the same studio. So, very likely they were kind of using the same ideas. So, I was kind of like taken out of it a bit because of that. I kind of wish this came out first, just so I, instead of thinking this is Anxiety but not done as well, I could have instead said this is like the prototype of Anxiety. And I probably would have enjoyed it more if I wasn't just thinking of Inside Out 2 so much while I was watching the episode. Still enjoyable. Every episode of this show is good. Like the first two that I ranked would give a 9. All the rest are an 8. So this is a good show. I just want to remind you that this is still a good show. I recommend watching it. It's a very entertaining show, even if there are some flaws here and there. Like I said, I recommend you go ahead and watch it. Especially if you're a Pixar fan, I think you will enjoy it. And I'm gonna give Win or Lose a B plus. And I hope that they make a season 2 because I do want to see more of this world and I want to see more of these characters. Like there are the side characters, you could make episodes about them. Like I said, make an episode about the janitor, make an episode about the coach's other daughter. From what we see of her, I'm like, what's her deal? What's going on with her? And heck, make an episode about Taylor. We got an episode about her boyfriend and her little brother. Give her an episode. Why not? Like just there are so many more things you could do if they could do if they kept making this show. I kind of hope that even though they said it was a one-off, I hope that this does get a second season. And like I never thought we would get a second season of Monsters at Work, but we eventually got that, so I'm not going to say never. Never say never. So those are my thoughts on Win or Lose. Thank you so much for watching. If you've seen this show, be sure to tell me what you thought in the comments down below. And be sure to subscribe to see more reviews like this in the future. And on that note, I will see you next time. Have a great day.